Hey guys, look, I'm down here. Hi. I'm not over there like usual. Today we're trying something different. We're trying something a little bit different. As you saw from the title, yes, read that correctly. We are ranking every single project from one of the most influential and long-lasting figures in the hip-hop scene, Mr. Kanye West. Now, why am I making this list? Well, one, I thought it'd be really fun and a kind of different video format that people love ranked lists, and maybe y'all get a kick out of it, and there could be a little bit of discourse, because of all artists' discographies, I feel Kanye's elicits some of the strongest opinions, almost to the point of parody. And two, and this is a more sad reason, but I genuinely think that as far as Kanye's career goes, as far as the public image goes especially, he is in the grave, so to speak. Don't think that another album that he drops will be charting very high on a ranked list for him, at least in my opinion. I hope I'm wrong, but I just kind of have a gut feeling, I don't know why I bumped my chest, a gut feeling that it's just not going to happen. I don't know why I had these on. So we'll be going over not only his solo projects, but also his collabs. So Watch the Throne, A Kid See Ghosts, as well as Vultures I. But no compilations and no mixtapes and no unreleased projects. So no Cruel Summer, no Yandi, none of those early 2000s, 2003 mixtapes that he made. And I'm not kind on to. I'm not doing it because that thing is the skeleton of an album with basically no meat on it. It's unfinished slop. So I guess you guys have my opinion on that album now. So what I'm basically gonna do is go with release orders. So we're gonna go from College Dropout all the way to Vultures I. We're gonna tier them from S to F tier, and at the end I will give you a actual list from worst to best from each album in succession, from the worst to the best. All right, we all set? We all good? We all good? Cool. I guess we can start. There's a lot to get into. So let's start with the College Dropout. Yeah. Start off strong with the College Dropout. One of the greatest debut albums ever, in my opinion, and easily one of the best hip-hop records of the 2000s. An album that is still relevant and relatable to this day. I mean, just think about it. Like, when was the last time Kanye came off as relatable, as likable? He had so much charisma and was way easier to root for when he was younger, which I guess is the case for a lot of younger artists. But I feel like it's especially the case for Kanye because he came through with such a strong personality and great fundamentals. He came on the scene with old school boom bap production with these soul and funk samples. His flows were fun and catchy. All the features were well incorporated. Hell, even Jamie Foxx got a moment to shine on this thing. His songwriting was fantastic, with moments that were conscious and moments that were clever or funny. And the song topics on here were so great and so well chosen, with the Black Power messages and chantings on Jesus Walks, to the idea that some people go to college and really have no idea what they're doing and end up wasting time, like on All Falls Down, or the family reunions when you go back on break from school, like on Family Business. I also just love the skits on here. They range from being these grand, really fun, really endearing gospel type interludes or skits to these really funny skits that are poking fun at the stereotypes of parents or other people influencing their kids when they're going off to college. And it ties the album together really well, and it enhances the flow instead of making it really awkward and clunky like a lot of skits of this era frankly were, honestly. Yeah, dude, one of my personal favorite hip-hop records. I mean, it has some of Kanye's best songs on it, from Jesus Walks to All Falls Down, Family Business, Through the Wire, slow jams. And I honestly think that with this record, Kanye started off about as strong as you probably could, and really just came into his own right away. I'm gonna put this shit easily in S tier, and I don't think a lot of people are gonna disagree with me on that. Ooh, okay, Late Registration. One of Kanye's most acclaimed and highly anticipated albums following College Dropout. With this album, Kanye really solidified himself as kind of mainstream in a way. With that one track, you probably have heard of, but honestly, this is gonna probably give me some hot water. This is one of Kanye's more overrated projects for me. Now, hold on, before you pull out your pitchforks, let me just say that I like this album. This is a good album, and I don't think it's a bad album at all. And I do think it is a logical and solid follow-up to the College Dropout, especially thematically, but I do think it is much, much weaker. Now, I will say, the one thing I do appreciate about this album is that Kanye didn't tank or muddle his style to appeal to the pop scene or even like the hip-hop heads. In fact, I think he took actually even more of a risk, especially with how much more conscious a lot of these songs are, especially in comparison to College Dropout. Not that they weren't conscious moments on College Dropout, but they feel a lot more front and center on this album. Problem is, I don't think these more conscious, lyrically substantive tracks like Drive Slow or Gone or Roses go over nearly as well as the best songs off College Dropout. Even the ones that were taking more of a political or just more of a stance in general about a certain topic, like Jesus Walks. Kanye's bars are still good. The songwriting is still on point, especially with the heartbreaking tale on songs like Addiction, but they don't carry the same weight and energy, and his flows are far less interesting and radiate much less confidence. They're still okay. They're kind of a rudimentary version of what he was doing previously. And also the beats on these conscious songs, they're just nothing to really write home about. I get that when you're making a conscious track like this, sometimes you want to let the lyrics tell a story. You want to let the song kind of be in the background and not so much get in the way of what you're trying to get across. I get that, but there are still ways to make the production interesting, but also subtle in a way that doesn't make it overbearing to listen to. Not to mention the skits, they feel kind of clunky and unmemorable, and they don't add much to the track listing, and it's a shame because they're so great before, and now they kind of just feel a little bit thrown in. They're not bad per se, but they're just not my favorite. Also, Gold Digger, even though it is one of his biggest songs, I was never a fan of it. I mean, it's not a bad song, but it is kind of annoying, and the songwriting's kind of stupid and a bit in poor taste. And the Jamie Foxx bit just doesn't really do much for me, man. It doesn't really do much for me. But I still think this album is good, and that's because the bangers on here and the soul samples when there are fantastically incorporated. The songwriting, as I said, is still very on point, and Kanye does make some great statements about drugs and motherhood and fame. I love the Curtis Mayfield sample on Touch the Sky and the Lupe feature on that track as well. I love the dark themes on Addiction, the marching band style quality to the beat on We Major, and the Nas Really Doe features are on point as well. And one of my favorite Kanye songs as well is on this album with Diamonds from Sierra Leone, which is a song that samples Shirley Bassey with Diamonds Are Forever, the James Bond track. Such an out there track, production-wise and songwriting-wise, with it being about the illegal diamond trade and relating that to Kanye's perception of fame in a way. That does still have some of Kanye's best performances on it. It's just not as strong of a debut as College Dropout, not nearly for me. But still, I'm gonna put it in B tier. I think it's a good album, but in comparison to all his other albums, I do think it's right sitting in this spot. On to Graduation. The album that ended the College Dropout trilogy, where Kanye really embraced pop rap and looked pretty damn good doing it. Are some of the tracks on here outdated? Yes. Are a couple of Kanye's worst tracks on here? Yes. Do I still think it's a great album and a fantastic end to the College Dropout trilogy? Absolutely. In my opinion, this is the Kanye album that on first listen, the beats kind of just hit the hardest. And that's because I think, well, the entire album really on this really wanted the beats to sell the songs. They wanted the production to hit the hardest. It's so catchy, it's so fun, it's so funny, it's celebratory, just like the graduation of college. And that is exemplified pretty damn well in the lyrics too. It's an example of Kanye pushing the boundaries of hip-hop and laying out the foundation for many pop rap bangers to come in the next decade or so, and they're still being made to this day. The opening track on here, Good Morning, samples Someone's in My Life Tonight by Elton John, and it's one of Kanye's best opening tracks, one of the best opening tracks on any hip-hop album, at least. And a lot of songs in here like I Wonder or Can't Tell Me Nothing or Homecoming just really elicit this nostalgic feeling, really hit this nostalgic sweet spot for a lot of people. All the incorporation of electronic music with flashing lights and Stronger with its Daft Punk sample. These songs they're just anthems. While the bars and the overall lyricism on this album definitely pale in comparison to College Dropout and even Late Registration, I still think that there are plenty of funny, clever lines, really funny quotables that I can just kind of like think about in my head and really just be entertained by it. I also respect Kanye for not bunching this album with too many features and letting the production and the performances really take the spotlight, which is something that he kind of lost a little bit of restraint for in his later albums. Yeah, Drunk on Hot Girls, Barry Bonds, they're not good songs. And I do think it makes it kind of inconsistent because of that, just a little bit inconsistent, but it still goes hard. It's still fun as hell. I don't care if this album's kind of outdated. I don't care if people think that it's cheesy and overly produced and just that it's aged poorly. I don't care. This album's still great. It's one of my favorite Kanye albums, personally. So I'm going to put it in A tier. Alright, following Graduation, Kanye took, at the time, his biggest risk on album with the release of 808s, an album that released at the time where he was at his most emotionally vulnerable, having just lost his mother. And it saw Kanye going in a synth pop route, an alternate R&B with a lot of autotune. At the time, this album was very divisive and mostly misunderstood, as people were just not yet ready for this kind of music, even though it would go on to influence many extremely popular artists like Drake or Future or Juice WRLD or Travis Scott or Kid Cudi, although Kid Cudi was definitely part of this sea change, as he was a co-producer or co-writer, I think, on a lot of tracks on this album, and obviously had his own spin on the emotional kind of hip-hop style with his debut album. Now this album is over 15 years old, and the hip-hop landscape has changed significantly the last 15 years. I do think it's interesting to go back and listen to this thing. It's very emotional, almost melodramatic at points, filled with autotune, and it has moments that time has not been kind to, but in the grander scheme of things, I think it's still a very good album. This album doesn't feature any pop, rap, or chipmunk soul-backed bangers. It features ballads and danceable electro-pop grooves. Songs like Heartless, Welcome to Heartbreak, Coldest Winter, and Streetlights, although they are lathered with a ton of autotune, were some of the most exciting moments in Kanye's catalog at the time and still hold up to modern standards when it comes to this style of music. The album is super cutting edge and extremely important LP in Kanye's discography, and I had to respect it for that. Of course, there are plenty of cheesy and annoying moments, like Yeezus' feature on Amazing, or the long-windedness of Say You Will, or the blah songwriting on RoboCop. Although I do kind of ironically enjoy See You in My Nightmares, the one with Lil Wayne on it, just because it's just a very, they can't sing for shit, but I don't know, I kind of think it's a little bit fun, but it's not a good song, and I would totally get someone thinking this song is abhorrent, as I'm pretty sure it's a lot of people's least favorite. But I'm getting off track. Kanye did get much better incorporating autotune into his music in the future, but still, with how many great songs are on this thing and how influential it's proven to be, I'm gonna put it in B tier. I do think for now, I'm not sure which one is higher, but I'm just gonna put it in B tier for right now. I think that it's a good spot. It's a good spot for it. All right. My beautiful, dark, twisted fantasy. Probably Kanye's most critically acclaimed album. One of the most lauded hip-hop albums of all time. And for good reason, because this record, it's pretty amazing. No matter what you have to say about it, you can't deny that this album has some of the best hip-hop production on it. The beats, the mixing, the sampling, it's all so finely tuned and elegantly presented. Even if the themes on this album are anything but elegant. Kanye's meditation on fame and how it's altered his personality, his love life, are all explored very well here. This album boasts some of Kanye's most visceral and passionate performances yet. The features even if there are a lot of them, frankly, maybe a little bit too much, are very well incorporated, and for the most part, pretty great. Although it does definitely falter a bit in the second half and then pick up again with Lost in the World. It's still a consistently opulent and awe-inspiring record to listen to, especially for the first time, if you listen to it for the first time. I mean, Jesus, the beat on Power with the King Crimson sample, holy shit. I could spend an entire video going over how perfectly crafted that hip-hop song is. I really could. It is truly that great, and it's one of the best hip-hop beats ever. I don't think anyone's gonna dispute me on that. It really truly is. And other hits like Dark Fantasy, Devil in a New Dress, Runaway, or Gorgeous paint this heartbreaking picture of the deterioration of Kanye as a person, which is disturbing because it's still happening. Yeah, the Chris Brown feature on Blame Game is kind of abhorrent, but who gives a shit? The rest of the record is so good. It's packed with so many highs. The scope and the boldness of this record alone is really something to behold, and one of the best comebacks in hip-hop history. I think it does deserve the S tier. Alright, watch the throne. Kanye's first collab album. The hype for this thing was extremely high after the insane success of Twisted Fantasy, and basically offers a fun mix of modern pop rap mixed with Blaine era hip hop. And it kind of feels like an extension of the sound that Kanye was delivering on Twisted Fantasy as well. Though I do love some tracks on it, and the production is incredible at key points. I can't help but feel that this album is pretty insignificant in Kanye's artistic progression. It's not a bad album, but Jesus, there are some tracks on here that I really just cannot stand. Like Who Gonna Stop Me with its dumb dubstep beat and vapid lyrics from Kanye and Jay. And That's My Bitch just reeks of that early 2000s braggadocious style that is so outdated. And Welcome to the Jungle, I feel the same way about that track as well. And yeah, overall, I do think the second half of this album is far inferior to the first half. Not by like comical standards, but it does definitely dip in quality. The first half though does have great highlights, like the first track, No Turks in the Wild, with its amazing Frank Ocean hook, or Otis with the Otis Redding sample, obviously, and some great bars from Jay in particular. And you know that that other one is obviously a fantastic banger too, with some hilarious and ridiculous bars from Kanye and Jay. And yeah, I think Jay-Z and Kanye really came through with a few great hits to coast on by and keep themselves top of the charts at the time, which is kind of what this album was basically for. Yeah, but overall, while this album is fairly decent, doesn't have a lot of staying power and has proved to be, like I said, a bit inconsequential and nowhere near as cutting edge as Kanye's records from before or some that would come after. I'm kind of feeling like a C tier on this one. And now we get to Yeezus, one of the most left field hooks, one of the most left field releases in hip-hop in general, as Kanye decided he was going to embrace the sudden surge of industrial hip-hop with guys like Death Grips and Clipping and MIA coming on the scene, or hell, even earlier with Dialect, although Dialect's been around for longer than even Kanye. I have written a review for this album, Album of the Year, so if you want to check that out, you can. But I'll kind of summarize what I said there and maybe update a little bit of how I feel about certain songs. Anyway, yeah, so at the time of this release, this was kind of a jarring and different thing, even for a Kanye album. But once again, I think his risk-taking paid off, as Yeezus, I think, does a fantastic job of mixing Kanye's usual verse-chorus catchy flows and pop rap sensibilities, heavy industrial beats. However, while I do think this album is great, it is pretty inconsistent. Some of my all-time favorite songs from Kanye, like New Slaves, Hold My Liquor, Bound 2, Black Skinhead, are woven into this 10-track LP. Meanwhile, songs like On Sight or Sun It Up have beats that sound like they were made in a goddamn microwave. Not to mention the lyrics here. While I can get down with how ridiculous and nasty they are at points, I cannot excuse lines like "Get this bitch shaking like Parkinson's" or "Put my fist in her like a civil rights sign." But even the worst songs in here still have some really cool production elements that make them at the very least worth a listen. While I did just trash the lyrics on here, I do really think some of Kanye's best songwriting is on this LP, surprisingly. And namely on songs like Hold My Liquor and especially New Slaves. The former is this harrowing tale about substance abuse and the dark ways that can affect your judgment. I even think the Chief Keef feature, even though it is auto-tuned to fucking hell, fits here. It fits the kind of dark edge and moody edge that the song is going for. New Slave is a song about the racial problems in America and Kanye comparing the racism he faces now to the racism that his mother faced back in the day, and even drawing comparisons to slavery back in like Civil War times. He sounds genuinely pissed and fed up, and honestly, that's kind of the central theme of the album for me, and I mentioned this in the review, is that it's frustration with race, social systems, drugs, or a multitude of other things, and the wild, distorted, almost horrifying production at points really sells this emotion. I can't believe Kanye was able to mix soul and industrial hip-hop not once, but twice on this LP. Although my one hot take is I think Broadway's a little bit overrated. It's still a great song. Anyways, I'm not gonna ramble about that. You guys can roast me in the comments for that if you want to. This album is patience testing, but a very rewarding listen overall, and I'm gonna put it in the A tier. Ooh, The Life of Pablo. Kanye's first album in 3 years at the time of this release, and a highly anticipated one at that, with the rise of streaming and the multiple delays and teasers that this album got. This thing was marketed to the point of parody. While Yeezus seemed like a collection of somewhat cohesive industrial hip-hop experimentations, Pablo saw Kanye go back to that usual grand presentation with a lot of features and producers and collaborators, and one of his longer track lists, I think it's the second longest behind College Dropout, I think. And while this album is a bit unwieldy and messy at points, with its overindulgence in these kind of meaningless, meandering 1 to 2 minute interludes, I still quite enjoy this project. Not as much as I used to, but I think it's one of the more interesting LPs in his catalog, for sure. The album feels, to me at least, like one of Kanye's more versatile albums. I don't really mean thematically, I really mean sonically. This album is a predominantly pop rap album, obviously, but there are so many other influences too, from gospel with Ultralight Beam, to R&B with Wolves or Fuck My Life, or trap with Fire's Just My Hands, and even some boom bap with No Parties in LA. The inclusion of all these weird 1 to 2 minute splurges where Kanye just goes nuts or tries to force a sound onto you for like 2 minutes, like on feedback or highlights, are kind of intriguing on first listen, but on each subsequent re-listen, I find myself getting more impatient with just how meaningless they are in the grand scheme of things. They don't really add to a strong theme at all. There's just not much to glean from them when you listen to it. And the flow of the album is kind of muddled because of that. But overall, all these elements do come together with a quality album with some incredible highlights and have at least some experimental edge to them. My favorite tracks being Famous with its excellent Rihanna feature and a beat switch up at the end, and Kanye's hilariously cocky verses. Real Friends, Wolves, and Fuck My Life provide a great segue into this darker, bleaker second third of the album and flow very nicely. The production on these songs is hazy, dreary, and haunting at times. The rapping from Kendrick and Kanye No Parties in LA is really something to behold, with that alphabet backwards line and that meal tickets line. Truly incredible melodically, and it really feels like an old school boom bap song for the modern era. And obviously the closing track with Sampha on the hook is really fantastic and sends the album off on a really, really strong high note. It's definitely got its issues. It's a bit too long, a bit too bloated. I'm gonna put it, it's tough. I don't think it's quite as good as Graduation or Yeezus. So I'm gonna put it in B tier. I'll put it in B tier for now. That's how I think that's a solid spot for now. It could be A tier, but I think B tier is a solid way to go. And next we come to Yay, Kanye's self-titled album from 2018 as part of his series of projects dubbed the Wyoming Recordings. Man, what an amazing year for hip-hop in 2018. So many great records released this year, holy shit. And this is one of them. This is honestly a personal favorite in Kanye's catalog for me. It's basically a 7-track journey into Kanye's mental state at the time of this release, and as a result, it's a pretty great piece about mental illness and the instability that's associated with it. There are tracks on here that are simultaneously darkly comedic while also being downright chilling. Like the first track, I Thought About Killing You, where Kanye talks about wanting to kill you. Not you specifically, but the you he's referring to is the other side of himself, his unhinged side. The beat picks up at the end with these wailing background vocals that sound like a sheep bleeding one last time before collapsing or something. Yikes features a fantastic, memorable hook that really sells Kanye's true fright for what his other side of him may do. Towards the end, the tattered string that was holding Kanye together emotionally is ripped away violently with songs like Ghost Town and Violent Crimes, which are incredible, conscious songs. The former being about the absence of pain, ignorance is bliss, sort of like that, and the latter being about Kanye acknowledging his insecurities and the worries about being a father, and how even if he comes off as overprotective and crazy, his love will never falter. At points it does seem like the album is a bit too stripped back, kind of thrown together, and a bit too skeletal, as the beats are nowhere near as intricate or complex as something like Twisted Fantasy. And a song like All Mine is kind of the product of that, I would say. But even that song has that glorious calm line, so we got that. Yeah, I know that Kanye fans aren't as high on this as I probably am, but I implore those people to re-listen to it. It's hella underrated and means more than the short track list would have you to believe. I'm gonna put it in A tier. I think it's A tier. Yeah, I hate to spoil the list, kinda, possibly, but this is a perfect album. It's one of my all-time favorites. I have written a review for this on my Album of the Year page, I plan to give this bad boy its own review, so I will be a little bit brief. But all I'll say really is that this album plays so perfectly as not just a sequel to Kanye's self-titled, but as a truly riveting and powerful meditation on not only mental health, but also existentialism and continued struggle to find happiness that's hosted by Kanye as well as Cudi. It has these deep, depressing lows and euphoric, manic highs that are only amplified by the mix of psychedelia, trap, hard rock, and grunge. Yes, there is a grunge song on this album. Cudi and Kanye bring these emotionally drained, passionate deliveries to each and every one of their verses. Cudi brings these ear-catching, dense, heart-throbbing hooks, and Kanye spits some of his most consciously aware verses ever. The range that the production carries is wild, but it's never messy. The album flows so effortlessly as it delves into this cycle of recovery, not physically, but spiritually, all in just 7 tracks and 23 minutes and change. From Kanye imitating gunshots with the snares on Feel the Love, to Cudi's multi-layered angelic hook on the Kurt Cobain worshipped Cudi montage, this album is an insane, trippy, unforgettable experience, and you need to listen to it today. You listen to it today. Yeah, it's... Oh geez, Jesus King is next, huh? Yeah, released this thing just a year after one of his most busy years producing-wise was not a very good idea. I know this album is known as definitely one of Kanye's weaker albums, and I don't disagree with that sentiment at all. This album is ill-conceived and very, very messy. It's basically just Kanye's attempt to merge gospel music with his pop rap style, and most of the time it just doesn't work. Not to mention the lyrics in this thing, they're not it. I don't think it's a terrible album really, but I do think it is not crafted in a very good way. And I really think that the ideas that he presents on this album are good ideas. I wish this album was better than it was. I really, really do. This album just has a really weird tone to it, where at times it wants to be life-affirming or heavenly, but then there are moments like Close on Sunday, and you get tonal whiplash so hard you'd swear Terrence Fletcher just threw a chair at you. At times, the gospel vocals and production do pop with songs like Salah or Follow God or maybe Water. But what this album basically is Kanye putting way too big an emphasis on his own faith without actually having something to say about religion in general or about faith at large. Which could have been kind of cool, but I don't know. If you want a decent version of this, then just go download Yandi, I guess. Which isn't even that great either, but it's better than this. I think D tier is a fine spot for it. It's definitely not. It's definitely nowhere near the same level as Watch Out Throne. I'll put it in D tier. I think it's in D tier. And then we get to Donda. Where is it? Where the fuck is Donda? I can't find it. Oh shit. There it is. Ah, Donda. While I do have a lot of fond memories with this album, it's definitely nowhere near the return to form that something like Twisted Fantasy was. The lead up to this album was super chaotic with that whole Drake beef and the leaks and the controversial people featured on it, Marilyn Manson. And although I do think it has a lot of issues, I still came away from it thinking that I somewhat enjoyed it, and I thought some songs on it were genuinely great. On this album, Kanye did do a much better job at fusing that gospel influence with trap and at times a little bit of hardcore hip-hop. The tone shifts a lot throughout this album, but it doesn't really feel jarring most of the time, and it feels like there's a structure to the album. But the big issue is the size of that structure. It's too fucking long. It's close to 2 hours. Kanye failed to trim this album down to its core tracks, and if he did, the album would be honestly pretty solid. It could have been a robust collection of good gospel-inspired hip-hop songs, but he just kept all this needless garbage in there, like those part 2 tracks, which are just giant filler to rack up streams. I don't know why he decided to do it. As I said though, there are highlights here. Jail is a great intro. Off the Grid has one of his best rapping performances, an awesome 5EO foreign feature, and a killer drill beat. Moon is probably the last Cudi Kanye song people ever get, and it's amazing. Jesus Lord is a cathedral-sized angelic ballad about his faith and overcoming hardship, and Praise God has a chilling and melodic flow and a great feature from Travis and a not so great feature from Baby Keem, but hey, I'll take it. It's still a good song. But damn, I could list so many skippable tracks on this album, and honestly, I really don't want to because I'd just be here for another of 3 hours. This album is just redundant. But I still do think it is relatively decent. Where to put it, man? It's definitely one of these three. I'll put it in C tier. I think C tier is fine for it. It's definitely on the lower end of the C tier. Donda 2, I'm not putting that shit in there. Alright, and now the most recent Kanye album, Vultures I. Yeah, this thing's not good. It's not as terrible as Donda 2, but it does stand as his worst completed project. I've already made a video on this, going in depth on every single track. If you want to check out what I think of this album more in depth, just go watch that video. But honestly, all this album really was to me was just a sad reminder of the mental state and artistry of Kanye at this point, and a sign that his career is basically over. It really has been for the better part of a year. Yeah, it's not good. In my opinion, has already dropped considerably in the few short months of its release. I think I gave like a 57 when I originally scored it, and now it's like dropped below the 50s. I just don't think it's a very good album. And God, why was this album charting, man, with that Carnival song everywhere? Yeah, I'm gonna put it in F tier. Alright, that's all the albums. Yeah, we did it. We tiered all of his albums, and now I'll give you the ranked list of all of them. Yes, here it is. This is the final tier list ranking. We got Kitsy Ghost number 1, Don't At Me. College Dropout at 2, Twisted Fantasy at the 4, we got Graduation at 5, Yeezus at 6, we got 808s at 7, T-Lop at 8, we got Late Registration at 9, we got Watch the Throne at 10, Donda at 11, and rounding out the caboose, we got Jesus King at 12, and Vultures at 13. And yeah, feel free to post your own list in the comments or trash my list if you really want to. And yeah, this was really fun. I definitely want to do this again with another artist or musical group. So let me know who I should do next, and I will probably do it. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit the notification button. Have a great day.